What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Real Talk Real Estate. This is Mortgage Monday. I'm David Green, and he is the dashing Christian Batchelor. Christian, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. We got another one coming at you guys on a whatever Monday this one gets published on.
Yes, well, it's the Mortgage Monday, if it's a Monday, and they are here for it. All right, today's show is about mortgage fraud, as you could probably tell from the thumbnail title, and we're going to be talking about how you can get in trouble for mortgage fraud, what is not mortgage fraud, what makes it mortgage fraud, all things fraud, so that you know where the lines are and how to stay in compliance. And I'm excited about it. So let's get this thing kicked off, Christian. First off, let's talk about some common misconceptions with mortgage fraud. And he didn't know I was going to ask him that, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about some common ones you see. But there is an obvious one when it comes to mortgage fraud, and that's that it is fraudulent to get a primary residence loan and then move out of the house. There are people that believe, like, if you buy a house as a primary, you're legally obligated to live in it for a year. And some people even think you have to refinance it if you ever want to rent it out. I get these questions on Seeing Green pretty frequently. Can you bring some clarity on what your legal requirements are when you are applying for a primary residence loan? Because obviously these have lower down payment requirements as well as better interest rates.
Yeah, you got to, I'll make it really simple for you guys. When you close, your intent is recorded on like an official legal document that your intent is to occupy the property within 60 days of your closing. So you got 2 months to move in, and you will remain in the property as your primary residence for 12 months. If you get repositioned for work or obviously change of life circumstances, there are exclusions where you can request to move out early, but it is not supposed to be an investment tool. So, like, you're not supposed to be able to buy a primary every month. Like, there are strict rules in place to avoid against that, because the way that underwriters and lenders see it is if you're buying a rental property, buy a rental property, right? Now, we preach a strategy that very strictly stays within the rule set, which we preach the one house a year strategy. That means you can buy a house every year because after 12 months, you have fulfilled your primary residence obligation. You will never hear us say, buy a house every month. Right? That's where you get in trouble.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Like, people assume that because we say buy a house every year, that means you can't move out of your house. It just means it's very hard to get a new primary residence loan within the 12-month period. But there are extenuating circumstances. So can you describe what some of those might be if somebody's like, well, I moved into the house, but X happened, I have to move out and get another one?
Yeah, ones that we've gotten approved. Now, always talk to your lender. These may not apply across the board to you, but a lot of military members that get, redeployed for work. If you accept a new job, that increases your quality of life in a different state and you have to move. We've had people, have, the unfortunate death of family members where they have to move back home and take care of somebody. We've had medical issues, if you got to go be around a certain caregiver or something of that nature. What typically does not get approved is, I want to move down the street. Like, how are you justifying it? You're in the same school district. There's no change to your life. Like, so like a lot of times, like you're moving away, right? It's usually a location based thing. Like if you have a job in California and you got hired in New York for a really good paying job, like, sure, we get it. But you're not going to, have a job in Miami and move to Hollywood, Florida. Like, you're like 15 minutes away. What are you doing? Right.
You don't want to move to Hollywood, Florida under any circumstances whatsoever because they have the most horrible city government you could ever imagine. But yes, good example.
I thought that was going to get a comment. That was an interesting statement.
He's rage baiting me right now, folks.
Yeah, that was an interesting city to choose. But for those who don't know, David's got a very interesting investment going on in Hollywood that we're trying to figure out. But regardless, it basically comes down to, like, does the move make sense? Is it warranted? And do we believe you? Right. I'll use the classic example I always do. We had a client, I won't name names. He lived in a $3 million house in San Jose. Those of you who know the Bay Area, San Jose is Silicon Valley, tech capital of the world, right? David, you'll get a kick out of this, but he wanted to buy a triplex in Stockton. Those who don't know Stockton, it's kind of like the butthole of California.
Right? And where you're trying to buy a triplex in that area is probably like, what's the center of a butthole?
Well, and David, our tech guy, who was living in a $3 million single family, was trying to convince us that he is going to move into the triplex in Stockton. The triplex is being sold for $450,000, by the way. So
imagine giving Christian this
guys,
task.
I follow the podcast. I'm investing. I'm going to house hack. And what do you think the underwriter told you? I don't believe you.
Got told to go touch grass. Yeah.
So obviously that's a hugely like that's a super extreme, right? But the same concept is still there at its core of like, is this a warranted and believable move, right? Which is usually why we coach people on how to like level up when you buy a new house and make it a believable move and, things like that. But ultimately, I can't give you a cheat sheet here. Talk to your lender. If you are considering having to move out prior to your 12 months, or if you're trying to strategize what is allowed, you should talk to your lender before making any hasty decisions.
Yeah, there you go. I've had that happen to me before too with the primary residence that I bought in California. My lender was like, yeah, we don't think he's doing it. It's too far away from his job. It's like, what? I don't even own a house. And they still tried to deny me for like an FHA loan. They're like, it's like an hour and something away from where he works. And I think I declared that where I was living was like, it was like 10 minutes away from where I worked because I was living in the Oakland Hills, but I was renting a room. It's like, yeah, I went from renting a room to owning a house. But the guy that I'm renting the room from has to move out. I have nowhere to live. Like, why would, anyways, I had to write like a really long letter that basically said my job used to have me report to Oakland. Now it has me reporting to this area instead. And it's closer to where I'll be. And it finally got accepted. But the right broker can give you some good advice on how to do this. The wrong one is just going to tell you no, and you can't do it at all. But it is good to know these things. What are some other common forms of things that people try to push the boundaries of where they can get in trouble for mortgage fraud?
Believe it or not, there's been a surplus in people using DSCR loans for primaries. And it's funny because DSCR loans have higher rates than primaries, but they're easier to qualify for. So they go find a property that can cash flow, and then they go move into it. You sign a very specific clause in a DSCR loan that it's the exact opposite. You will not occupy it as a primary. It is not underwritten that way. It is not intended for you to live there. Is intended.
Yeah, because they want to know that you have income coming from the house. They don't want you living in it because that would make it harder for you to pay it back. And they haven't checked your ability to pay it back as much as what the house is going to make.
100%. That's exactly right. So, I mean, occupancy is by far and away, I would have to believe, the largest type of occupancy fraud. I mean, there's people who don't disclose debt. So, like, if you have, like if you're borrowing your down payment, things like that, and like you got a personal loan and then you let it season in your bank account for 60 days, like technically you're supposed to disclose if that money was borrowed, right? There are loan programs that allow you to borrow your down payment, but for standard, traditional, conventional ones, there's people who try to, do weird things with quick claim deeds. I don't want to call them out, but the subject to world, sub 2 is not legal, technically speaking, with most, it is for, I guess, VA and FHA, you can assume a loan, but if you're not assuming a loan and you're just on title of somebody else's property, like you're not supposed to do that, right? I'm probably going to get a lot of hate in the comments for that because they have a very devout fan base. But it is true. That's why, all the people who teach you how to do it, the first thing they tell you is make sure you don't talk to your lender about this. Like, if the first piece of advice is withhold information from your lender, it's probably questionably legal at best, right? Other forms, mortgage fraud.
I got one for you if you're thinking about it. What about the people that we've come across that put a house in escrow, said it was going to be their primary, posted it on Facebook Marketplace for rent?
Oh, yeah.
And then got caught. You want to tell some of those stories?
Yeah, we're refinancing one person out of it literally right now. If he's listening to the show, I see you. But yeah, we had a guy, that exact story. Bought a house, primary residence. Showed us he's moving in. The property was vacant, ready for him to go. He had a job nearby. Everything was good. And it was on Zillow for rent literally the day after we closed. Guys, for the love of God, do not do that, please. It is very bad for your lender. Very bad. That becomes an unsellable loan. It's bad for you because you can technically get like blacklisted and not get a loan to you again.
Did you hear how mad Cinder is about someone doing this?
Yeah, he does not like mortgage fraud. And just
he's like, oh, this I've heard this before and I do not like it. That's how it makes him feel. drives them crazy like that.
This is the mortgage fraud, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like if it's questionable, like I would, like if there's ever an industry that I would like, not that I would mess around with legality anywhere, but like I definitely wouldn't do it in the mortgage world. Like there's so much regulation, guys. Like you're gonna get caught. Like it's also not worth it. Like you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars with most properties, right?
Yeah. But a lot of people don't think that the lender's going to put that much work into this.
That's true. That's what a lot of people say too.
Right?
A lot of
these
people
lenders,
that advice.
They're digging to see if this happened. Have you heard any stories of people like having someone drive by the house to see if it's been occupied after? Can you tell some of those?
100%. Yeah, they'll send people out. I actually, believe it or not, there's actually a huge movement going around. There's a couple companies actually starting around this basis of using AI. Using AI to go like call into the utility company for you with like an automated voice saying, oh, hey, I'm so-and-so confirming the utilities are paid for this property. Can you tell me like who paid it? Things like that, right? And lenders have a certain percent of access that they can get to your stuff, for things like lien filings and stuff like that. Like if they call your cable company and your primary residence cable bill is in somebody else's name, that's a red flag, right? Like who's paying your cable bill? Now, if it's like your dad or something, okay, that's fine. But like, usually if you're a brand new home buyer, like the cable bill is going to be in your name. It's pretty clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen a lot of companies starting to like pitch themselves of like, we've created an AI, occupancy fraud checker. And, all you do is you sign up for our service and we'll tell you if your client moved into the house 30 days, 60 days post-closing.
Mm-hmm. And
like, that's kind of scary because now you're not even arguing with people. You're arguing with robots telling people that you live in your house or not, so that's a whole, regardless of how you feel about AI, that's scary to me because robots, but
Oh yeah, it's I don't know how this is going to work out. Like we already had the issue of people pretending to be us online. I had several friends of mine, cop buddies that I knew, people I've known for a long time, they got scammed, that sent $50,000 to a scammer thinking they're investing in a deal of mine that I'd never talked to these people. It's a fake profile. It's horrible how easily that happens. I don't know how AI is going to make this even worse. Anything else that people should know when it comes specifically to mortgage fraud, that maybe they're getting advice from other people about how to do something? What about with the pad split model, like rent by the room? Are you familiar with any restrictions when it comes to ways that you can use a house that people need to be aware of if they're going to rent out rooms?
No, yeah. I mean, you can do it. If it's your primary, you can have roommates. Pad split is legal. Obviously check with your city, jurisdiction, like the town may not like it, but there's not lending guidelines saying you can't have roommates for sure. Like that's allowable. A lot of, short-term rentals are a big one. Like, can you short-term rent? A lot of people break short-term rental rules. I still see Airbnbs all over Lake Tahoe. Like South Lake Tahoe outlawed Airbnbs. You can't do it anymore. And like, try to go stay in an Airbnb in Tahoe. You can do it super easily. I don't know if people are just paying the fee or whatever's going on, but who knows? But
so what about if somebody got a short-term rental, used a DSCR loan or a secondary home, or maybe not secondary home loan, but investment property loan, anything like that, and then they want to move into it a year later or in the future? Like, I want to make it my primary. Is that allowed?
Not on a DSCR loan. You're not allowed to DSCR loan and use it as a primary. As a conventional investment property, you can move into properties after a year. That really anything conventional, you sign your commitment for like a year. Like this is going to be this property for a year, right? Second homes per year, primaries, investment properties. You could absolutely move into an investment property, in the future if it's yours and you qualified to buy it. It's harder to qualify for primaries. So like really hard to qualify for investment properties. Really the thing they're trying to avoid is you getting a loan product that is better than what you should have gotten and putting a down payment that is less than what you should have gotten. So like they're much less concerned about you moving into a rental because you put more down and have a higher rate.
Right.
Like they're trying to make sure they underwrite it effectively. And like, people like aren't really, I guess sometimes that can be a rare situation, but like 99% of occupancy fraud is I bought a primary and I rented it out. Like it's almost every single one because they're putting 3 and 5% down. If they're getting down payment assistance, even 0% down, they're getting really good rates and they bought an investment property. You're not supposed to do that. Like there's a reason why investment property loans exist, right?
All right.
Yeah, I guess it could happen the other way though, but that direction is much more common.
So what's your final piece of advice as we move on to our article today for what people need to avoid when it comes to mortgage fraud that they may not even have known that they were committing?
Be honest, talk to your lender. Your lender will guide you if you have I don't want to speak for every lender out there.
You could, because you've read every single document in the Fannie Mae website because you're an anomaly of a human.
I'm the only one psychotic enough to actually read every word in the Fannie Mae
You just kind of made me scared, though, because there could be a lender out there who wants to close a loan and you say it and they don't want to blow it. And they're just like, yeah, you should be fine. But if they don't know all of the guidelines, they could be wrong. I mean, I haven't really thought about that before.
All the time. It happens all the time.
Oh.
David, we know a guy, who I won't drop names, but a commercial guy who had a lender in his pocket, who the lender was breaking the rules. I don't know. Editor, because I don't know if you want me talking about it.
No, that's okay. You can say it. Like, we just won't say any name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That is a very good point. This was a high profile case. I didn't even think about this. But the bank had a person on their side that was helping to break the rules, and they got in very big trouble for it. And the people that did deals with him had no idea that this was happening. They were relying on that person's advice that this was fine. So that is a very solid point, that even if you do talk to your lender, if your lender is incompetent or if they just want to close that deal and they don't really care about the law, it's kind of like having a lawyer that's dumb. You could have a lawyer that still gives you bad legal advice. You could potentially get in trouble.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, 100%. Your lender could walk you into mortgage fraud. All right, be careful.
All right, speaking about dumb, let's talk about a politician that recently
what a segue.
did something pretty dumb. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, signed the mortgage document that she signed that has her facing 60 years in prison. First off, I don't know what circumstances get you 60 years in prison for this. I'm imagining that's like the maximum sentence, and it's probably a habitual offender or like a Bernie Madoff type thing. I don't know, Christian, maybe you would know. That might be a little sensational, but let's talk about what happened here. A one-page document signed by the New York State Attorney General Letitia James is at the center of the federal criminal charges for which she now faces 60 years in the pen. And the second home writer for her mortgage, Christian, what is a first home writer or a second home writer?
It's basically it's the easy way to explain them. I'll call it's the disclosure you sign where you certify like your occupancy. So an occupancy writer says like this, all the things that we discussed, this will be my primary for the next 12 months. The writer is just the name of that form.
Okay. It allowed her to secure a better mortgage rate from Annie Mac. What the heck? What's Annie Mac?
It's just the lender.
Why is it?
It's funny because they and so Penny Mac does the same thing.
Yes. Okay. So they're purposely marketing themselves to sound like
a government
Freddie Mac. That makes me feel better why I didn't hear it. I got very insecure right there. Like, how have I never heard of this new Mac? But they're doing that on purpose because they want to get the credibility. I have heard of Penny Mac
did the same thing. Yeah.
Netting her nearly $19,000 in mortgage savings, according to federal prosecutors. Do you think they're referring to closing cost, Christian, or you think they're referring to the interest over the life of the loan?
Probably the interest over the life.
Yeah, that's also really not that much if you think about it, to be fair. Over a 30-year loan, $19,000 is not a huge amount there. Yeah. In reality, James's serial criminal grandniece, I've never heard that phrase used before, serial criminal grandniece, Nakia Thompson, who moved in soon after she closed on the house. So she bought a house with a primary loan, then her niece moved into it instead of her. I wonder if that could possibly be her defense here. Like, I didn't intend, I was going to move into it, but then I had my niece move into it, which is like me instead of a tenant. Much of the strength of the case, which alleges James committed federal bank fraud and made misstatements to a financial institution, could rest on whether Thompson was paying rent. Ooh, I sound like I knew that was coming, but I didn't. We try to blind read these things. Because that's exactly what I thought. If she's not collecting rent, you can't prove that the intent was to defraud. You could just be like, you did something stupid, but that's not the same as intending to commit a criminal act, which is probably that intent word, I'm guessing, is what the prosecution is going to have to prove. But the relative of New York's top prosecutor told a grand jury in June that she was living rent-free in the 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Well, she's also probably told to say that. James's signature appears at the bottom of the mortgage rider dated August 17th, which explicitly lays out what the home can and cannot be used for. And there it is, a picture of a mortgage rider. There you go. Among the covenants on the rider were a requirement that James would occupy and use the property as a second home. Okay, more is coming to light. Christian, can you explain the difference between a second home and a primary residence?
Yeah, primary, you occupy more than 50% of the year. A second home, you occupy less than 50% of the year.
All right. Now, we're going to take a quick break from the article. Explain to people why they should apply for a second home loan with the one brokerage and what the benefit to them doing so would be.
Second home loans, number one, 10% down. So it's
that's pretty big.
Lower down payment than an investment property. You have to occupy it at least 2 weeks of the year, and you can occupy it all the way as much as up to less than half the year. So, 179 days or 180 days, whatever, half the years. It can't be more than half the year because then it's your primary. Wherever you spend the majority of your year is your primary residence. That's your mailing address. That's where you get your pay stubs, your bank statements, all that. A second home can be rented out when you're not there, which is nice. But you are intended or required to occupy it for, like I said, at least 14 days.
Okay. So a second home is something that you could put 10% down, not 20, which is pretty good. Right. And you get a better interest rate than an investment property, but not as good. It's kind of like right in between primary and investment, right. But you have to occupy it. How many days did you say?
At least 14 and a maximum of less than half of the year.
So you got to occupy it at least 2 weeks of the year, 2 weeks vacation. Right. That's like a normal thing, but you cannot occupy it for more than half the year because then it would become a primary loan.
That's
right?
Correct.
Any restrictions to renting it out when you're not using it?
There's some weird ones. It's not supposed to be on professional property management. It has to be available for you to rent, because you have to occupy it. Yeah, it has to be available. So like you can't sign a 12-month lease with somebody for a second home because then you can't occupy it, right? It works good for Airbnbs because you can just, really the loan program was intended for like grandma's lake house by the, in the mountains or whatever, that's why the loan product exists. It's a home that your family uses for a portion of the year that you may rent out a little bit when you're not using it. Obviously, with the surplus of Airbnb, who knows if that guideline changes here soon. But
well, that's my question would be on this. Sorry, everybody, for the rabbit trail, but I think everybody's listening is thinking the same thing as me. They're not as worried about Letitia James as they're like, hey, man, can I do this? If you buy a second home and you do use it 2 weeks out of the year, like that's not like, let's say I wanted to use this loan when I bought in Hawaii. I didn't, but let's say I did. And I could stay there for 2 weeks or more, but I'm not going to live there. Can I put it on Airbnb and rent it out when I'm not using it legally?
Yes is the answer.
Okay. There's no 6-month limit of how long you can rent it out on.
The wording is very weird here because the wording for the rule was created before Airbnbs were popular. What the wording technically says is you have to occupy it for 14 days and it has to be available for you to occupy up to that 6 months. Now, it depends on how you define available. I mean, that could mean you have it on Airbnb and you just block off the days, which you can. Some lenders may interpret that as, it has to be vacant for half the year.
Right.
I don't know if I believe that because it doesn't sound like that's in the spirit of the underwriting guidelines. But in all reality, I have never had somebody get in trouble for this. The only people who've gotten in trouble for second homes is you close and you have somebody sign a 12-month lease.
Of course.
Then it's definitely not available for you, and you can't occupy it for 2 weeks.
And I'm guessing that what someone could do is say 12-month lease, but you have to vacate it for these 2 weeks. People probably tried that, which may be why they're saying no professional property management. What's the phrase that you use?
Or it has to be available to you, right? It can't be the occupancy can't be determined by somebody else.
It forbids you from giving a management firm or any other person or entity any control over the occupancy or use of the property.
Right.
This is if it was because it's primarily for her own use. So that would be if you let a property management company take it over and had someone sign a 12-month lease, you'd be violating that if I'm understanding this correctly. Okay. But if you are it's on Airbnb and they don't have control over the asset, they can just book it. But you're like, hey, no one's using it. That's when I go use it.
There that it has to be, possible to made available to you, right? Like if you can make it available for you to occupy for up to 6 months of the year, then that seems like it fits the spirit of the guidelines. which means can you book off half of your year? Sure, you can. Right? If you're running your own Airbnb, you can book off half the year if you want to. Absolutely. You can deny bookings. It's not in control of anybody else. You're not signing long-term leases. That's, to me, that's how I interpret the spirit of the rule. I do think this is probably a part of the underwriting guidelines that will probably have an overhaul here shortly.
Because this case is getting so much attention.
Yeah, and mainly because just Airbnb has, rushed to such significance in recent years. So I just think there's probably some changes for the second home loan program coming. But as it stands right now, that is how the underwriting guidelines read.
Thanks, Letitia. Ruining a good thing here. The document that she signed forbids any shared ownership arrangement requiring her to rent the property out or give a management firm or any other person or entity any control over the occupancy or use of the property, and that it would be primarily for her own use. So if you hear this and you go, oh, a primary residence is, I can't rent it out. Not true. It has to be primarily for you. You can still rent out the rooms to other people. You can still rent out your primary residence to other people when you're not there. You can make your home available on Airbnb. Like I'm going to do that with the house that I'm living in right now. I'm going to have it decorated as a short-term rental. I'm going to lock off the podcast room. And when I leave town and go somewhere, I'm going to put it on Airbnb and I'm going to collect money and then have it cleaned when I get back. So that is not against the rules if it's your prime residence, but it has to be primarily for me. I have to be living in it, like you said.
You have to occupy it for more than half the year.
There you go. And it goes so far as to include a section saying James would be considered in default on the $109,600 loan. Wow, that's a pretty low loan amount. If she or anyone else acting at her direction gave inaccurate information or statements regarding her occupancy of the residence as a second home, much of the case could hinge on Thompson's statement that she wasn't paying rent. I wonder how hard that is to prove, though. I feel like you would just get a warrant to search her bank statements and see money coming in.
Yeah.
And there you have it. And,
do. That's probably
and money going out from the niece. Yeah.
Yeah, they will subpoena her bank statements. I would have to believe that's exactly what they would do.
Prosecutors said in their indictment that James filed tax documents showing she spent 0 days in the house and that she received thousands of dollars in rental income. Oops. Well, that's
there you go.
Wouldn't that suck, though, that you're like, hey, I declared my taxes to the IRS legally because I wanted to withhold the law, and then that becomes evidence to be used against you in a mortgage fraud case that you
probably why Trump refused to, because his tax returns are probably, holy cow.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you look through Trump tax returns long enough, I'm sure you'll find something with his, thousands of properties he has, right?
She also claimed exemptions for money she spent on the property, which we would describe as a write-off. So that is something you can only do on an investment property. You cannot write off things on your personal property against your income, but you can write off things if it is an investment property against the income because you would be paying taxes on the income. So I think what they're saying here is that her tax statements show that this was used as an investment property,
correct,
but the mortgage document said it couldn't be used for that reason. Now, let's get into the actual details of this case here. This is not something that the government is running around looking for everybody to be doing. I don't think that they care in general. My understanding of this case is that Letitia James spearheaded a case against Trump, and I think it was over his Mar-a-Lago reporting of what he said the property was worth. There was a huge hullabaloo the last time Trump was running for president, where he applied for a mortgage or some form of financing, and he needed to provide a what's the net worth document called that I can't think of right now? Not a personal history statement.
Personal financial statement?
Yes, personal financial statement, a PFS, which is a list of all of the assets that you own, all the money you have in the bank, all of your sources of income that the bank uses to determine your net worth to see if you are able to support the loan they're going to give you. And his Mar-a-Lago estate, he claimed is worth a certain amount of money. And then when they wanted to stop him from becoming president, they went, they being his adversaries, whoever that was, which I think Letitia James was a part of, and said, no way, that thing's not worth that much money. We hired an appraiser or a BPO or something to say it's worth way less. So now this was subjective because you don't have a zestimate for something like Mar-a-Lago estate, right? Trump's legal team said, no, it's worth this much money because it could make this much income if Trump wasn't using it as primary residence, and Trump owned it, which makes it worth more. And there's all these other ones that are like the comps they provided were bad. They didn't have as much land or they weren't in the right area. And the people that were prosecuting him said, no, it's not worth as much as he said. He committed mortgage fraud. And the goal here was to stop him from becoming president, try to put him in jail. What isn't being said in the article so far is there's a little bit of retribution here. Letitia James, who went after President Trump for committing mortgage fraud, was found to have letter of the law committed mortgage fraud. Now, spirit of the law, does the law care about this if it's not Letitia James and she didn't try to get the president in trouble? I'd let you comment on that, Christian, if you think that's the case. Maybe with AI, the freaking IRS, or not the IRS, but like the feds will be able to figure out how to prosecute people for mortgage fraud very easily. Maybe they'll find a way to be able to go through everybody's stuff and figure it out. But this isn't something that I think people should be shaking in their boots unless they've targeted the president of the United States and tried to put him in jail. That puts you in a position for a counterpunch, which this is a pretty gnarly one, because I'm looking at this like $109,000 loan balance, approximately $19,000 that she saved over a 30-year period of time. That's like peanuts compared to what we see most of the time. And then she let her niece live there. It wasn't even like she went and put it on for someone else to buy. Doesn't mean she didn't commit mortgage fraud, though, and that's the point. Sometimes you can have the best of intentions and even be unaware. I think I can safely assume that Letitia James's loan officer probably did not say, what are you going to use the property for? Did not explain the form, did not say, hey, you're the attorney general. Maybe we mind our P's and Q's on this a little bit. Maybe we look at this thing a little bit closer. I'm imagining if you were doing this loan for her, Christian, you'd be like, hey, you're a big deal. We need to slow down and we need to look at this thing and we need to make sure that everything is perfect because you're in the public eye. That's my take on it, though. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, really that should be done no matter who the client is, but especially for the New York Attorney General, I think that an extra level of care should have definitely been given for sure.
And this can happen when that doesn't go down. So, folks, don't get popped for mortgage fraud. Use Christian and use a one brokerage loan officer, and let us help you to avoid that. So what did we cover today? We talked about primary residence loans, what they're supposed to be used for, and when they can be used differently. And just to highlight that, Christian, if you get a primary residence loan, you live in it, and then you move out and decide you want to rent it out, any issue with that?
After 12 months, no.
There you go. 12 months later, you can rent it out to somebody else. We talked about different ways people commit mortgage fraud, sometimes knowingly and how they get caught, sometimes unknowingly, just so you can avoid that. We talked about secondary home loans, also known as vacation home loans. Is that correct?
Correct.
Down payments on those, what you can use them for and what to avoid. We talked about investment property loans. We talked about DSCR loan no-nos, the DSCR no-no, and how to avoid that. And we talked about how Letitia James got caught. Christian, if people want to reach out to you, where can they go?
If you don't want to commit mortgage fraud, you should follow me on Instagram and send me a message. At the one broker is my handle. If you do want to commit mortgage fraud, leave me alone. We'll
That's a great line right there.
I do not want to be involved in it. I got too many licenses to lose.
That's funny.
But yeah, the one broker on Instagram or theonebrokerage.com is our direct website that you can find out more about what we do here.
There you go. You can go to davidgreen24.com, use the chat option, get a hold of me directly. People sometimes do that while I'm recording the show. Oddly enough, I always think it's funny when that happens. Send me a message. Tell me how I can help you build your wealth, what questions I can ask or answer for you. And if you'd like to be featured on the David Green Show, head to davidgreen24.com/ask, where you can submit a question to be answered on the show. And in one of these days, I'm going to have Christian join me over there to help answer the questions. Christian, I know we went into overtime today and you've got to get back to work. I really appreciate you for being here and for all the hard work you're doing. Thank you for that. And folks, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with somebody else who may not have gotten the best advice or is foolish enough to use a different loan company. We'll see you guys next week on Mortgage Monday.